Hi, I'm Robert O'Brien from O'Brien Guitars, and this is the O'Brien neck angle jig available from LMI. Well, actually, no, this is a box that contains the O'Brien neck angle jig available from LMI. And when you receive it, there's some assembly required. So let's put it together. Upon opening the box, you'll see that there's a bunch of packing peanuts in here. Now, these packing peanuts are biodegradable, and they're made out of a potato starch or some type of vegetable something. And you can eat them, I guess, in a pinch if you had to, but you can take them out on your garden or compost heap or whatever and dump them out there and water them, and they'll fertilize your garden. Look at that. They also don't have static cling. I hate those styrofoam ones that have static cling and you can't get them out of your shop. But as you can see, it's neatly packaged. Got biodegradable peanuts in there. So let's pull everything out and get to work. So as you can see, the jig comes nicely packaged from LMI. It's got all of the hardware and the templates that you chose to use with the jig. It also comes with a set of instructions. Now, my wife tells me that us guys, we never stop and ask for directions. We don't follow directions. Follow the instructions I'm going to lay out here in the sequence I'm going to lay it out. If you don't follow it in this sequence, perhaps it's not going to come together for you correctly in the end, and the technical term for that is bad. Also, I highly recommend that not only using glue, you also use brads to put this together. So just to give you an idea of what we're shooting for, this is the end result. If you have something that looks like this after following the video instructions here, then you did something right. Let's get going. So I'm going to start by assembling the base assembly. This is the base assembly. I'm going to come in and put the right side in, and I'm going to come in and put the left side in. I'm going to use glue and brads to do that. I'm just using the LMI instrument maker's glue. That seemed appropriate since this is going to be used for making instruments. And it's a pretty snug fit. So if you need to, come in with a fretting hammer or something, tack it in place. Make sure that you're flush on the back side here. And we'll go ahead and put the other one in at the same time, and then I'll put some brads on it. All right, let's tack it with a few brads to help hold it in place there. I just happen to have a brad gun here hanging on the side of my bench. What are the chances of that? I'm using 1.5-inch nails, and these just happen to be 18 gauge. The next piece to go in is what's known as the base center. And a few brads in this to make sure it's going to behave itself. Next, I'm going to take the 5/16 by 18 4.5-inch carriage bolt and insert it into the pre-drilled hole here in the base. If you need to, come in and give it a little love tap with a hammer there. Good. On the other side, I'm going to add a 5/16 washer and a 5/16 hex nut. Using a crescent wrench, I'm going to snug that up. I'm now going to set this aside and work on the body clamp plate assembly. So this is one part of the body clamp plate assembly. You're going to take two 5/16 by 18 T-nuts and put them in there. Now, word of caution, there's also a couple of 1/4-inch T-nuts in here. Don't use those. Use the 5/16 ones. Happened to a friend of mine once. Make sure you use the correct one. Place it in there, show it a little loving. And now go ahead and attach the brace. And of course, we're going to put a little glue in there and use some brads from the other side. In the box of materials, you'll find a thin piece of cork. That gets glued to this right here. Now, you could use double-sided tape, you could use spray adhesive, but I find that the glue works just fine. Just place that onto your cork. And then just use a razor blade to cut the cork off. I like to then just set that aside, but keep a little weight on it until the glue dries. So now we need to take two of the 5/16 by 18s all threads, and these are 7 inches long, and thread a couple of the 5/16 hex nuts onto them. Now, this is pretty tough to do because they're locking nuts, and the best way I found to do it is just take yourself a drill, chuck it up in the drill, come in there, and then get yourself a wrench, and then come in and thread it on to about 2 inches from the end of the all thread. Using a Sharpie and a ruler is a good way to mark where you need to go with that hex nut there. The instructions that LMI sends with the jig says to next put the all thread into here with a couple of washers and go ahead and mount the body clamp assembly. I prefer to go ahead and put the cork on this side and cut this area out. It's a little easier because you can just place it flat and that keeps the cork from curling up. So that's what I'm going to do. Now it's easier to just go ahead and place the cork over there like that. And then just turn it over. Use gravity as the clamping pressure. And then take your razor blade and cut off the excess. When you're cutting your cork off, cut it about 1/8 of an inch from this top edge here so they can fit into the body clamp assembly in the dado later. So I'm just going to take my straight edge here and then cut that off about 1/8 of an inch shy of where the end is. So now take your 2 pieces of all thread, put a couple of 5/16 flat washers on there, put them into the body clamp assembly, like so. Then from the other side, put a couple of more of the flat washers. Once you have the 5/16 flat washers on there, you want to take a couple of these 5/16 knobs and insert them on the all thread. Now, it says to use some type of thread lock compound like Loctite or something. I don't happen to have any in the shop right now, so I'm going to use just a little drop of medium viscosity CA glue. So next we're going to start working on the neck pivot plate assembly. And this comes pre-assembled with a hinge on one side. It's got a couple of holes here. I'm going to take 2 of the 1/4 inch T-nuts and put into those holes right there. Now on my particular jig here, those holes are cut a little bit undersized for my taste. So I'm going to take a drill bit and open those up a little bit. I am using the drill bit that is just a skosh smaller than 5/16 because the outside diameter of that is 5/16. This just happens to be 19/64, so I'm just going to open those up just a little bit. Now I'm going to take the 4 1/4 inch by 20 carriage screws and thread those through these 4 holes here. On this side, I'm going to drop 4 1/4 inch flat washers onto there, and then 4 1/4 inch hex nuts. And then I'm going to tighten these with a wrench. This now gets set aside, and we're going to work on the top assembly. In the hardware that comes with your templates, you'll find 4 T-nuts. Those are going to go into these holes here. So next, turn the top assembly over. We're going to install the templates. The mortise will go on this side, and the tenon will go on this side, using the 4 bolts that came in the hardware with the templates. Just go ahead and begin to put these on here. Then we're going to get out a square and make sure that these things are square to the edge here. Now, these templates are made out of MDF. I've used them on hundreds and hundreds of guitars and never had a problem, because I don't tighten these bolts very much. If you're worried about that, run a little bit of thin viscosity CA glue in that channel there, and that will help strengthen the fibers of that MDF. You'll get a little bit more longevity out of your template. Like I said, though, I've been using mine on hundreds of guitars, and I've never had a problem. Using a square, come in and place that right up next to the end of the top assembly and along the edge of the template, and make sure that that template stays square as you snug down these little bolts here. And once again, it's just kind of finger tight. You don't have to kill it. Same thing on this other side. Make sure everything is square to the front edge here. This piece here needs to be cut apart like that. If you want to come in and just sand those off of there, it's a good idea. So there's no scrap material there. And then these are risers. Left and right risers will be placed on the top here. But I'm going to take a file or some sandpaper or something and really clean those up so I can get this in there nice and square. So the risers get placed on here like this. Make sure you have this little L cutout place here over that one. Just get placed on there like that. And you want to put a little spacer in between them so that you know that it's going to let your templates to slide properly. Too much of a gap and you got some slop in your template, not enough, they don't slide well. So I'm going to put the Robert O'Brien business card in there as a shim, and I find that that works quite well. And it might even make your guitar sound better. Once you're comfortable with the dry fit, then you can come in and put a little wood glue on the bottom, and then you can just use binding tape or painter's tape or something to clamp them down, or lightly tack them with a couple of small brads. Make sure your brads is just a short one so it doesn't come out the other side. And make sure that the brads you're using are short enough for it not to come out the other side. So now the neck pivot plate gets attached to the top assembly, and it's very important that this goes on there square. So please follow these steps carefully. We're going to start by placing a couple of these 1/4 inch plastic dowels into the pivot plate. We're going to start by verifying the hinge location by using this little acrylic template and placing it over those 2 little pins we put in there. And this fits over the tenon template like so. There's a little notched area down here, and that goes right over the tenon With the acrylic template on the dowels and on the tenon template in that notched area, I'm going to turn it around, fold this hinge down, and you can see the pre-marked location. So go ahead and place it there. If you need to, come in and remark the location of those holes out here on the edge. I'm even going to make sure that this thing is square by using a square here over on the edge, and then I'm going to come in and remark those holes if I need to. But what do you know, mine are pretty close where they need to be. I'm going to pre-drill with a 3/32 drill bit and then attach those screws. So now I'm going to take my pivot plate, put it back on the top assembly, come in with one of the wood screws supplied with the kit, and place it in that pre-drilled hole. And I want to snug this up, but not quite all the way. Same thing down here on this end. So now I'm using the centerline guide, putting it down on the tenon tongue there in that notched out area and making sure that my centerline is where it needs to be. Once that checks out, I'm going to turn it back around over here, pre-drill the other 4 holes and install the other 4 screws. Now I'm going to go ahead and snug these last 2 screws up. There we go. So now it's time to mount the body clamp and the body clamp plate. And don't put it in there upside down like I did. You want this opening coming down like that. And let's put a little glue in there. Now you can mount the body clamp plate by threading the all thread in through the T-nuts. And if you want to, from the outside here, you can come and move your template back and come in and put a couple of brads in there to help hold it in place. Next, we're going to attach the right side and the left side. And let's put a little glue in there to do that. And I'm going to put a couple brads down here to hold it. And do the same thing on the other side. So now that you have the base and the top assembled, you need to make a judgment call. Do you want to be able to take the jig apart and store it when not in use, or do you want to leave it put together permanently? I like to put it together permanently, so I'm going to put glue, assemble the base to the top, hit it with a couple of brads, and clamp it. If you want to be able to take it apart, then just get a couple of bolts at your local hardware store, put it to the side, come to the base, attach it with a nut, and then you can disassemble it when not in use. I'm going to add glue, and I'm going to put it together permanently. So when you put the base on the top assembly, make sure you have it in the orientation I'm showing here, with this cutout area facing the neck pivot assembly. And then just insert it into these cutout areas here. The 5/16 carriage bolt now needs some hardware on the inside, so just slide the pivot assembly out of the way here. On the back side, install a 5/16 nut and then a 5/16 washer. Then push the neck clamp assembly back onto the carriage screw, put another 5/16 washer and a 5/16 nut. Adjusting these nuts here is how you lock in your neck angle once you've determined it. Now I'm going to take these two pieces. These are the neck clamping plates. I'm going to put a little glue on it and install some cork. The neck clamping plates are then placed onto the screws, and what holds it in place are these 1/4-inch knobs. And these are just threaded onto the ends of the screws here. The angle extrusion is used to help determine your neck angle. It goes to the top of the jig like this, comes down the side, and is fixed to the side of the pivot here with this block of wood and the knobs. To mount the center line to the jig, I've just turned the jig upside down and I have it extended off the side of my bench. Come in with the brass inserts and insert those into the acrylic center line. Then come into this dadoed area here on the back side of this jig and insert those in. Come from the front side with some screws and tighten those up. Now the center line is meant to be removable. When you're cutting the neck side on the tenon, then you can just remove the center line, spin the thing around on the bench without this hitting the edge of the bench. So your neck angle jig is now ready to be used. I've been using it in my shop for many years to precisely dial in the correct neck angle when cutting the neck to body joint. It's even been shop dog approved. Happy building.